Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood, and we're sitting here with my co-host, Goodlee Shans.
Good afternoon, everybody.
It is afternoon.
It is now.
That's a good one. And today our guest is Paul, and I'll butcher your last name, Gio.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Paul Gio.
Gio. All right. I know it was with a G.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Paul lives up in Fort Francis, Maine.
Fort Fairfield.
Fort Fairfield. See? I'm bad with names.
Hey, look, there's Fort Kent, St. Francis, Fort Fairfield.
Lives up in the county anyway.
You can just say the county.
Yeah, lives up in the county there. And he has his own podcast, which is Maine Outdoor Enthusiast. I found that a couple years ago. I think the first one I watched when you was doing somehow it just came across, and it was, you were doing a review on the Big Woods packs.
Yeah, that's my favorite piece of hunting gear.
Yeah.
We always used a belt pack. And we had it was like a fleece pack from Cabela's. And that would get soaked. Stuff inside would get soaked. And I can remember when Big Woods Box came out with their wool one, I thought that was the next best thing. Bought two of them. One for me, one for my father. But my favorite is, so you guys came out with the Nuna. And that is by far my favorite pack.
That's what I wear now, the Nuna.
I don't carry much gear.
Yeah.
Go
Now,
pretty light.
Your first one, was it the solid green or was it the green and black check?
It was the checkered green.
Yeah.
It's when we started it's the first solid one. I actually showed Paul at the house. I got my original green one.
I got my original one. It's the first one.
It's pretty tattered up there, but we had them made in a stitching company right in Skowhegan made them.
Kidding.
We got all the materials rounded up and took them down there.
Where'd you get the wool for those ones? The original?
That came from Rhode Island, right down by Chris. He found it, just searched it up, and it was a wool company, and all their wool was recycled wool.
Okay.
And it was cheap, so it was for us at the time. I think back then it was, because that's going back
15 years probably.
15 years pretty near ago. And I think it was like $7 a yard for that wool. Yeah. Actually, the way that came about, because I had my original pack that I bought when I started hunting up here was a Cabela's one. And it was one of them, some kind of a fleece one.
Yeah.
And same thing, but I liked the design of it. So, and I wore that. There wasn't anything else. It was quiet because it was fleecy, that low plush fleece, and it was quiet, and it had, basically it's the same. I copied that design because mine ended up, first thing, the buckle broke, and then I got another buckle and it was the wrong size, so I cut the strap down an inch and a half and I fixed it. And then the zippers broke, and so by then I got to do something different. So I had my sister-in-law, I gave her that pack, and she's a good stitcher, and she took it apart, and I took an army wool shirt down, green wool, it's almost an olive wool, and she made one out of that, and I've got that somewhere. That's the original prototype, and I wore that for a year. I looked at it, and I wore that, and I said, yeah, that's gonna be good. So then we started searching out.
Do you still have it?
I have it somewhere.
That'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the move from when we moved up there, but it's somewhere. I do have it.
Because the other options for belt packs back then were there's a lot of nylon, ballistic nylon.
Yeah,
a lot of straps
really
and water bottle holders and stuff like that. It's like
and they're still most of them are still kind of like that.
You don't need all.
They're too busy for in the woods. Those are made for walking out in the open country or something, but. So that's how the idea come about, and when we ended up, we took the prototype down to the stitcher in Skowhegan and got all the materials, and they worked from that, and so we went through them, and then seemed like we had a lot of trouble with that stitcher. They'd make 100 of them, and I remember one time. They had them. They didn't stitch the front pocket and the bottom, so everything went through to the back. You know what I mean? It was just the quality problems weren't very good. So I think we started. Beagle made them other ones for us, right?
Yeah,
when we got
the second
when we got going with Beagle,
had some more ones.
and then they made the pack for us, and we made that when we went to the checkered.
Yep.
And that was the first, and we made them. I think we made those, or did when we went there? I think that's when we scaled them back because there was a lot of people wouldn't buy them. They said they were too big. They were a little
Quite
bit
wide?
longer.
All right.
So when we went to those second ones, or the ones that Beagle made, I think we shrunk them by like a third.
Okay. Yeah.
And then because we'd show them at shows and everybody'd pick them up and they go, that's too big, when they'd put it down.
Yeah.
So we got to fix this. So I think we actually did we make two sizes of
We made
those?
2 sizes at the end of that. We shrunk them down because people didn't
Yeah.
like the big one, which
So we
I
had
like
the real big one, and then
you
we
you had 2 sizes back then?
yeah, and then for a short period of time, because we had the big ones we had to get rid of.
Yeah.
So then when we went to the one that was probably the size you bought originally, it was shrunk by a third, and those sold good. And we finally, when we sold out of the other ones, we didn't make any more of those big ones.
Yeah.
And then the next step was Silent Predator. When Beagle folded up, Silent Predator made them for us. And the only thing they did, and I don't know if you got one of those.
I do.
Because
that was the first one that I'd bought.
They put an 1.5-inch belt strap on it, and it's kind of flimsy. They didn't use a very, and because I mean they worked fine. It just wasn't. When I designed it originally, I wanted the 2-inch on it.
Yeah.
And we're back to that now. Now that we got control of it, we're back to the 2-inch. And then, now when we went to the Nooner, all we did on the one that we have with the shoulder straps, it's the same size as your original one you bought. We took that size and added the shoulder straps and then shrunk down another third.
Which is
the
sweet.
Nooner
Which is perfect.
So originally they were, not originally, the first checkered ones were 12 inches by 6 by 6. That's what you bought.
Okay.
And that's what the strapped one is. The Nooner is 12 inches by 4 by 6. So it shrunk in 2 inches. And we had to take the GPS pocket off the top.
Which, I mean, I don't use the GPS anymore, so.
Yeah. But what we found was a lot of the guys were using them for a water bottle pocket.
Okay.
So you could slip your water bottle in and it wouldn't be cranking around. So we left that on the feature for the one with the shoulder strap. So, well, now we got some history of the pack.
So, yeah, the original one, I remember it would sag a little bit. Some people would complain about that, I think.
Yeah. Some
it
people
was not
did.
a deal breaker.
I never bothered me any. But the Nooner, when we went to that, and again, because the other one, I never had enough in it to fill it anyway, unless I had a couple trail cameras in it, for something. So I think we finally found the sweet spot.
I think when I did that video, I think you may have commented on it about the name, where it came from. I wasn't sure where the name came from, Nuna.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
where'd it come from?
Actually, the name came from Rick Labby goes, that's the one you grab it out of your truck and you get a track at noon and you don't need anything much in it. And that kind of stuck.
I was Googling like, man, what could Nuna stand for? Is it another language? Is there something behind it? Yeah. And you're like, actually Nuna stands for, yeah, that was pretty sweet. See, that's one of my favorite pieces of hunting gear.
Yeah. It's a nice pack. And it's nothing's waterproof unless it's rubber, let's face it. But it's pretty water resistant. But I still like my fire starting. I keep it in a Ziploc.
Yeah.
My little fire starting stuff, lighter and match thing. And then when I take, like when it's snowing or snowy days, I take an extra pair of gloves and I roll them up and I put those in a Ziploc.
All right.
Just in case you get enough wet and dampness through there to keep that dry. But everything else is fine in there.
I don't recall anything getting wet in mine, even in pouring rain.
Yeah.
Everything stays pretty dry.
Yeah. Do you wear yours under your jacket flap?
It depends on what I'm wearing for a jacket. Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes, a lot of times I will wear it on the outside because I can pick it up off my hips
Yeah.
and just swing it around
Yeah.
and access stuff real quick. So I'll keep my phone in there.
Yeah.
So if I'm using my phone as a GPS,
Yeah.
it's like Onyx or something like that, or a grunt call, or want something out of it, pick it up off my hips, swing it around, grab what I need, swing it back.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's under the jacket, it protects it, keeps it.
Yeah. That's what I do. Even the bigger one, I always would put it under. Now it would stick out some or whatever, and it'd be kind of gaudy there. But the Nooner, I can flip the back of my jacket right over, and it's right up under there, and sheds the snow right off from it.
You're not trying to make a fashion statement.
No.
Right? You're out in the middle.
The reason why I like my old original one is because I use it differently. Most of the time I'm guiding. I'm not even carrying a gun. But I have all of my stuff that's inside of it. I got it in sealable Ziplocs. If I sit down to call for the clients, or if we sit down to have our sandwich or whatever, I take my 2 or 3 Ziploc bags that I have in, I take it out, and I put my big fanny pack down, and I use it for my seat because it's big and it makes a good seat. So that's what I've got mine, so that I can just unzip it, grab those 2 or 3 Ziploc bags, take them out, take my grunt call or my rattle bag or whatever, and then I sit on my fanny pack. That's why I like mine.
Good thinking.
Yeah, that is.
If you want a little pad and you can stuff some fur boughs in it,
Yeah.
sit on it.
Yeah. But eventually I'm going to have to do something because Kelly's getting sick of restitching it, and then it's worn out, like around on the corners. You can see the red. I don't know what that material was we put on the inside of them, but my red's showing through in a few places because the
Mine is too.
stuff is
Mine's
worn
got
through.
holes in the edges of it.
Here's a few words about our sponsors. Make sure you support these guys. They're all top notch, and they keep Big Woods Bucks going. Thank you.
Being the low-tech guy I am, there's one thing I've learned to embrace with technology, and it's my Onyx. I used to carry maps and GPS when it finally came out and stuff, but the Onyx has eliminated that because I've got my GPS in my phone now with my Onyx app. I can mark everything in that. It's helpful that I can show other people by putting a pin in if I want to send somebody to a place. Being a guide, that's important, you know. I can give them the pin, you know, put it in there, you know, I text it to them, whatever. So if you want to get your Onyx, get your Big Woods Bucks code, BWB, and get your 20% off, but I highly recommend it. Give you a little update. Skinner Sights. We all know they're the best site going, but it's a great company because Andy and the crew there are innovative, and they're always thinking up either new models to make a site for, improve the sites, making mounts for scopes, and now they've come on with their own line of scopes and red dots. Whatever Andy does in the company, it's top-notch, first quality, and they stand behind everything, and we're glad to have them as a partner, and we hope you'll try their sites, and you can trust your life with those, and they're going to get you the game. So get your Skinner sights, and you can trust me that you're going to be glad you did. Just wanted to talk a little bit about minus 33 in the wool they have, which I believe is best wool going, whether it's base layers or your socks or whatever you're wearing. You got to have wool. I've been stressing that for people for years, to wear your wool, whether it's the outerwear or even your base layers and socks. I've been to the tour of the plant, see how they make their socks, and it's quality, the fit is right, and they're going to be long lasting. I've got socks I've had now for several years, and they look like I'll have them for several years more before they even think about wearing out. So I trust my life to wool, and you can too. Minus 33.
All right, back to the podcast.
But that's pretty. I like stuff that has like nostalgia behind it,
Yeah.
and that.
I've got like the original Big Woods Buck hat, the first hat.
No kidding.
The T-shirt. I got like a little museum down the house. I got all the original stuff.
It's like those packs, like if the original packs, if those could tell a story, I mean, that a lot of history.
Been a long way. Yeah.
Got a
Mine's
lot
been
of
to
miles.
Alaska. It's been to Canada.
Yeah.
Been on, I don't know how many different hunting trips in Maine.
Yeah.
Same thing with guns.
Same thing with guns.
Like, have you ever switched guns over the years? Upgraded to newer 7600s?
When I first started hunting, my father gave me his, it was passed down. It was my grandfather's and his. It's a 90, model 94 Winchester 30-30. Then I gave it to my son, and now it's Ryland's, although he's never used it.
Okay.
So, and then I hunted with that, shot a few deer with that, and then when I started hunting down to the relatives' lodge we was talking about,
Yep.
When I started hunting there when I was 16, my father's cousin, one of them, kind of took me under his wing. He didn't have any boys, and he took me under his wing and kind of taught me the mountain there and the woods and stuff. And the way they hunted down there, it was usually like they'd go sit in the morning and then hunt during the day. A lot of times they do a little pushes during the day and then hunt and then sit it in the evening. That was kind of that's just the way they did it. So he gave me this, it was a model 721 Remington, which was before the 700s.
Okay.
In 270, and it had a low power Weaver scope on it with a post, 1.5 to 4.5. And he said, "Here, you're going to be sitting out there." And they had some. He worked for Central Maine Power, and he used to get the old cross arms and stuff, and the bolts and all the stuff when they replaced things.
Yeah.
And he'd make tree stands out of them. He'd put his climbing things on his feet. That's all CMP. They didn't have bucket trucks back then, so they climbed. So he'd climb up a big spruce tree. Usually what he'd do was he'd cut the top right off from it and drop the top.
Okay.
And then it might be 20, 30 feet up. He'd build a tree stand. It was all good and rugged. He'd be bolted. He'd drill through the tree and he'd bolt it in.
God, yeah.
So I knew where those were, and I might go say, I'm going to go sit over, and they all had their name. Each one had their own tree stand. And he said, yeah, take that. It's got the scope. You can see better and dim light with it. So I'd never used the scope before, but it worked pretty good, in that dim light. So anyway, the end of that week, that was the first week I went up there. He said, take that gun with you. And I go, I can't take that gun, Take it with you. It's yours. So he gave me that gun. Yeah. And I hunted with that and I still hunted down there like pretty much through when I went in the Marine Corps. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps that next year, I came up here to hunt, and I still had it. That's what I had for a gun. I didn't think about anything else. But then when I got up here and started hunting in the snow, I'm going, boy, I'm cleaning this out. It started dawning on me. It really weren't.
Change something up.
But I still used it until came up here in 80, and then 87, I think I bought that. It's the first year they made the carbine in the 7600.
Okay.
And I bought one. The year before that, I had bought a 742 .6 carbine.
Yeah.
And I put a peep sight on that. And I didn't like the way it carried. It was just awkward and it seemed heavy. So I said, I'm going to try the pump. So I went down to, I think I bought that pump at a trading post up in Norway or something like that. We were out driving around. I said, let's stop in there and see what they got. And had one brand new, So I bought, I think it was like $390 or something like that back then for that gun. And so that's when I started. I put the peep sight on that. And then I said, well, maybe I'll just buy another one and put a scope on it. So I bought another one the next year, put a scope on it, I think I put that low power scope on it. And I'd lug that on the fair weather days, and I'd lug the peep on the other days. And I never shot a buck with the one with the scope. I shot them all with the one with the peep. I go, I guess I don't need that anymore.
Get rid of the scoped one.
So I I took the scope off and put a peep sight on, and when my son turned 16, I gave it to him for his birthday at Christmas.
That's pretty
or something.
awesome.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty special.
So then from then on, that's the only gun I've ever used deer hunting. So other than a muzzleloader, in muzzleloader season.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
sweet. So first time I met you, we were doing a conference call, and I asked you if you ever go up to the county hunting.
Yeah.
You're like, why would I?
Yeah.
So you don't make it up there at all, do you?
No, it's kind of nice around here.
Is
you know?
it? It is a nice area.
Well, what about I'm trying to think if that would be in Piscataquis, the buck you shot over by Baxter one year. What county would that have been in?
I don't know. That must be.
That might be northern Piscataquis.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
Either that.
So there's
or,
only 2 times I've ever left. That year was opening day. We on Sunday, the day before the opening Monday, it was after Residence Day, Saturday. We were supposed to get 6 inches of snow everywhere, like all across Maine.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my chores on Sunday and waiting around in the snow. It looks like it's going to start snowing, but it never did. Finally, I went in. It was dark and looking out the window all the time. And it's not snowing, I go. So I looked at the weather, and it said that it kind of moved east, so we weren't going to get anything. And I'm like, oh, no. So I said, I wonder if they got any over east. So I called Matt Libby, and he said, yeah. It was like 9 o'clock at night when I called him. He said, yeah, we got 4 or 5 inches. It's still snowing a little bit. I go, okay, thanks. So I jumped in the truck. I got up at 3 in the morning. I was in the truck at 3:30.
Chasing the snow.
Headed north and across the Golden Road, and then there wasn't a stitch of snow until there was a dusting. I had to go through the Chizuncook Gate there on the Golden Road, and there was like a little dusting of snow. And then I drove all the way over to the T-Loss Road. And when I got there was like an inch, maybe 2, and then headed up the road. And then that's where it seemed to be the line was at like Chizuncook Lake east. And this guy told me that like 10 years before, he told me about there was a deer yard up on the backside of Baxter State Park. And I'd never been there, never moose hunted there, never did anything over there. And I had my Atlas map with me, and I started to try to figure out how to get in to that way. And so I just drove in there. I got to the check-in gate because I tried a couple side roads, but it was actually, I think, down that way, maybe it had still snowed. It snowed till towards morning anyway. And I never saw any tracks.
Hard
I'm
to
like,
find.
geez, I better head up there where he said there was some deer.
Yeah.
And I drove in. I checked in at the gate at 9 o'clock in the morning at the T-Loss gate.
Yeah.
I checked in and headed in, and I never saw a deer track. And I'm like, I don't know if there's deer here because I haven't been there, so I don't know.
Shot in the dark.
So I'm driving, and that year there was, like now, there was a cow season that week. Come across some guys, they had a cow down the ditch there, and so I kept driving in. I drove all the way in. I took some side roads to get me as close as I could get to the back of the park there, and I got out, spread the map out, looked around at it. I said, well, I'm just going to head east. I'm going to head east and make a big circle for the day. That's what I always plan. And I struck off. I went down through the ditch and up over the other side, and there's a deer track there, half full of snow. I could see it was a buck the way it was walking, but I couldn't tell how big it was. I said, well, I'll follow it. And I followed it, and I ended up catching up to it got into a kind of a year-old cut in the cedars and stuff, and he was laying in a little patch of furs in the cut there, and I got that on film. He ran out. It was a 2-year-old buck, kind of a funny rack that went up straight and not much for points on it. And so I filmed that one, and I left that, and I said I struck back into the east to head into the park, and I got across the line, and it was all like bigger woods. It was nice in there, And I don't know how far I went, not a long ways. And I cut another track. And this one only had like about an inch of snow in it. And I could see it was dragging his feet there. And I said, this thing looks like a better buck here. And I just started along on it, and he made a scrape. And I'm like, yeah, all right. So I kept going on it. And he was shagging for does. But in that whole time, he only came to one doe and a lamb. He actually went out of the park, got into like a cut, or like along the line, there was a cut there. And it looked like he kind of chased that doe and little fellow around a little bit. And he went back in the park and, I don't know, went a little ways. He, kept making a scrape once in a while. And then he rubbed his antlers on a brown ash there, a small one. And a lot of times they do that before they lay down. And it was going into some thick stuff. So I crept in there, and there was a bed there. And I'm like, yep, he was right here. And I felt it, and it was frozen. So I said, he's just got up again a while ago. So I just went easy, and it was kind of pushed through some spruces in there, just going easy, stepping and looking at his track. And I get in there, and it kind of opened up a little bit, and I could see another bed there. And he wasn't in that one. It was frozen. And then he walked around this blowdown spruce, and he was eating the old man's beard. It was a new blowdown. He went all the way around it. So I'm just stepping and looking. I'm like, this thing is right here. It's the first week, He ain't going anyway. He's going to be here. And I'd take a step, and I looked everywhere, and I kind of got around the other side, and there's another bed. I'm like, he's
Got to be right here.
He's here. So it's the same thing. I just kept taking a step, and his track went out, and there was an old, I call them cart roads. It's the ones before they trucked wood. It was when they had wagons and sleds.
Yep.
And I could see that cart road going up through, and there's blowdowns in it. And he walked up it. I'm kind of on the edge of it, and there was some spruce or firs along the edge. And I just kind of look out his track as far as I could see, and it kind of went up that trail. And so I still kept looking, because it was a lot of blowdowns in there, and you couldn't see very far, And then I was kind of had these spruces kind of for cover along the side there. And when I got to the end of them, where it was going to be, I had to get out in the open. I stopped right there behind that last fir, and I looked around, and I look over there, and I can see him, the back of his head. He's laying back too, and I can see his antlers were outside his ears. I said, that looks pretty good,
You had no idea you were there?
No, he was facing the other way.
The other way.
And so I pulled up and give him one in the back of the neck, and he rolled over sideways there. And
that was
and what he had done was he'd gone up that cart road, and he'd swung around and was feeding. And so when he fed his way around like a half a circle, he was watching back where he came from.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he made that. They do that quite often. They don't realize where they really came from, So there he was. We got him.
We'd hunted that similar area for quite a few years. And I don't know, we just seemed like there was never any really big bucks there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was overpopulated or what the deal was.
Yeah.
And we'd shot some, they were aged bucks. They were like 5.5 years old. They weighed like 155 pounds.
Oh, no kidding.
And I can remember walking in some of these roads, and it seemed like all the deer tracks were like cookie cutter tracks, like all the same. Looked like a 2.5-year-old buck or something.
So I must have got a big one for up there.
It was I can remember, we were staying at some camps on the T-Loss Road, and they had a log there. And I can remember going through the log and looking at that area to see what was shot. And there was, I think I can only remember one that was over 200.
Yours was right around 2, wasn't it?
Mine was just 201.
No kidding.
Early, the first day it was 201. And his track wasn't, it's about what I figured it was. When I looked at it, I said, that's probably a 200-pounder right there. And that's just, that's what it was.
Yeah. It was odd. It was really weird.
But that's genetics. So I believe that. I remember one year here, 6 out of the top 10 bucks taken in the state were shot within 20 miles of Jackman.
No kidding.
So you think about that.
Yeah.
And it was always, since I started hunting up here, down at the store, Bishop's, they always kept a board out there with the 200-pounders on it,
Yeah.
And there was always, it always seemed to run about 1 out of every 6 bucks tagged.
We're over 200.
Was over 200. There ain't really anywhere else you can come up with them like that. Probably Eustis is the same, but so that's why I always figured you can get a big one anywhere in the state.
Yeah.
But that's why I always tell people, I have a lot of people ask me or tell me, this. They said, geez, I never shot a 200-pounder. I shot a lot of bucks. And I said, well, I want to shoot a 200-pounder. They go, I said, well, where you hunting? Well, over by Bangor. I go, you're probably never going to shoot one. The odds are so slim of getting. Yeah. I mean, they are there, and people shoot big ones there. But if you're trying to get a 200-pound buck, you better hunt where the odds are in your favor.
Where they are.
Yeah, where they are. Yeah.
Hi, Hal here, host of the Big Woods Bucks podcast. We're excited to announce our partnership with the most respected and recognized land company in the Northeast, Christmas and Associates Land Company. Owners Dan and Mark Christmas are 2 upstate New York natives with deep roots in the Adirondacks and Tug Hill Plateau, as well as 2 of the most passionate big woods hunters you'll meet. Whether it's newly constructed camp surrounded by state wilderness or family getaway, their team of experienced land guides are the best at matching folks with a perfect land tract at an affordable price. They even provide financing. Christmas Land Guides will provide full land tours using ATVs, snowmobiles, and even snowshoes so that you can scout every acre. Christmas Land and Camp staff also help you construct the camp you've always dreamed of using our in-the-house master builders. For over 35 years, no one in New York State has provided more big buck properties and family hunting camps to hundreds of folks who love the woods than Christmas and Associates Land Company. Dan and Mark and the whole company remain dedicated to wise land conservation and treating everyone they meet like family. Always available 7 days per week unless there's fresh tracking snow. Call 800-229-7843 or visit Land and Camps on Facebook or go to landandcamps.com.
Well, last year, 2024, the biggest buck in the state was shot in my town.
Yeah.
Weight-wise, 261.
You ate a lot of
saw
potatoes.
that.
A lot of potatoes.
Yeah. I just bought the Maine Sportsman from this month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in that. Yeah, it was unusual too because 261 was the biggest, and they had a lot. I remember my dad got one year that weighed 250, and it just made the top 10.
No kidding.
This year they went all the way down to like 240, and a 250-pounder would have been in the top 5.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at it yet, but
the year I shot that hog buck that was 260, he was number 8. There was
260.
It was number 8. Yeah.
Wow.
And Chris Krakowski shot one that was the next day, the day after I shot that one. A guy tagged when it was 263. And I'm like, who the heck is that guy? I asked Ray in the store there, and he goes, I don't know. His name was Kirtland Crump. Kind of funny, he kind of odd name, Kirtland Crump, know. And he goes, I don't know. He's staying up at your place. I go, oh, he is? So I go up there, and he was hanging on the pole beside mine. They look like twin brothers.
No way.
And and then another guy from town shot one, 267, was Chris Krakowski's. And I didn't know the other guys, but there was a couple shot like out between here and Rockwood, out in that demo country. And
I'm pretty sure you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure Chris told me he was going to work and he had a 12-gauge single-barrel shotgun in his
he was
truck.
logging. He was a logging contractor.
And he was just going to work, and he kept that in the truck to shoot partridge. And that buck crossed the road in front of him. So he's driving around and he's fumbling around in his dash or in his glove box looking for a buckshot or a slug.
Found one,
stuck it in that single barrel, walked up the road and peeked out around the corner. And
the thing's still there. He walked across the road and he gets it. He walks up the road and the thing's standing there looking at him. Probably left his truck running or something, He was probably waiting for some
Jeez,
dinner, He's coming in the log. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was the story that I remembered.
So yeah, that one up in Fort Fairfield, the interesting thing was 540 yards he shot that at.
I
And
remember,
to me,
I
that
read
seems just like unimaginable.
Yeah.
Shoot that far.
we don't shoot them that far.
No.
40 yards is more like a.
But like you were saying the other night, what was the farthest?
Furthest I've ever shot
you
was
shot a deer?
120
Yeah.
paces, and that was here. I might have shot one close to that, another one here, but all them years we hunted in Ontario, I never shot a deer. And there was clear cuts there. I just never happened to see a big one out in a clear cut. I always shot them in the woods somewhere, you know.
Would you say 50 yards in would be the most common?
Probably average 50.
Yeah. No, yeah, there ain't many. I can't think of very many I've shot over 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where a peep sight comes in.
Yeah.
So handy.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I want to use one awful bad. I just can't seem to give up the scope.
Well, when you
What
grow
you used
up.
to
When I grow up.
When you grow up,
someday.
you'll learn. Yeah. Yeah. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I like the peeps a lot.
Yeah.
Target practice and out back. It's surprising. You wouldn't think when I first looked at one. I'd never shot one until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And you'd think looking at it, like you look through that peep and you move around and it feels like that bead, you can move that around with your.
Yeah, but your eye, what it is your eye wants to center that thing
crazy.
automatically.
Yeah.
And plus at 50 yards, even if it's off a little bit,
You're good.
a deer's a pretty good sized target at 40 and 50 yards. So, yeah, these guys that worry about if their gun will shoot an inch group at 100 yards, for most of the hunting that we did, if it shot a 6-inch group at 100 yards, you're still going to be
the original bead on a 7600, the ones that it's on mine. And I know when they went back, the 760s actually, the earlier ones have a smaller bead on them.
Okay.
But the 7600s have a fairly good sized bead. It was a brass bead there, and I painted orange. But anyways, at 50 yards, the bead covers 4 inches.
Okay. Yep.
So it'll completely block out a 4-inch bullseye. So that's, if you can hit that, if you block it out, and if you can keep them in the bullseye, that's the best you can expect, right?
Good to go.
But it'll still, if you take your time and you keep it, you look at the edge, say you got a 5 or a 6-inch bull, you just put the same distance around it.
Keep her in the
I can
center.
shoot an inch group if I just pay attention.
Really?
Yeah, with my peep at 50, I can shoot
No
an
kidding.
inch.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Did you know the guy? You said he was from your town. Did you know him?
Actually, we were talking about him the other day. He's going to join us next week on the podcast.
Oh, good.
He's 4 years behind me in school. Actually, his whole family, they're avid hunters and shoot deer every year, and they shoot some big deer. And
I
actually,
think it might have said that was like only his second one over 200.
yeah,
right?
he shot one in the same area, 249, 246, a few years back. But just his whole story was kind of neat because he went to his plan A spot and there was a guy there. And, you think some people could get all up in arms. Someone's in their hunting spot and go home and call it a day or whatever, get upset. And he was good about it, cordial, told the guy, I've been actually seeing deer here and here. And I went to his plan B and pulled in, and the rest was history. There's a big buck, but the other kicker is, 540 yards. I'm like, well, I'm not shooting that buck at 540 yards. I'm just looking at it. But yeah, he made a good shot, dropped it right there. But yeah, his father's the same way. That's a Eastern Aroostook County thing, field hunters. It's all agricultural land on the eastern side of Aroostook County. So that's how a lot of people hunt.
I can remember a few years back, the thing that I remember about it was had a crazy looking rack on it, but it was in Aroostook County. A young kid on Youth Day, he shot it was the biggest buck taken that year, and it was like 280. And same thing, it was in a field and it was on Youth Day. So he could have shot a doe. So a doe came out in the field and he shot at the doe a couple of times and never touched it, and it ran off. And the buck came out and he shot it and killed it dead. It was 280 pounds. But it had a, you remember, it was
I remember
a
that
picture.
one,
It
yeah.
had a, on one side, I can't remember what, one side was kind of fairly normal, but on the other side, the antler came right down and curled down around in front of his face.
Yeah.
It was a really
Crazy
odd looking.
one, yeah.
Do you remember how
Old
long
buck.
ago that was?
Oh, I don't know. In the last 10 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably 10 years
I
ago.
don't recall that one.
Yeah, it was a young kid on Youth Day, 280 pounds, and he, I don't know how far across the field it was, but it was far enough he shot at
Yeah.
the doe and never touched her. And then when the buck came out, he evidently got rid of his buck fever and killed the buck.
Took care of that. Well, that's a good time to
Yeah.
calm down. You get the shakes out of him on the first shot.
It's funny, Hal would tell you the same thing. That you get, now a moose is a pretty big target,
Yeah.
and most of the time we're calling them in. So even our moose, a lot of times we're shooting them at 50 yards.
Get him close.
I think it's because they're so fascinated by those antlers. They're focusing on those antlers or something, but a lot of times they'll shoot high and they'll shoot right over them.
Really?
Don't ask me how you can miss a moose at 50 yards, but they do, don't they?
I don't think they're looking through the scope. To tell you the
Do
truth,
they
they,
get-
don't. The bears, the bear hunters are the same way. If like a bear hunter, how do you miss a bear at 20, 25, 30
Yeah.
yards if it's in the scope? They ain't looking through the scope. They're looking over it, or they're doing something. Fever. They're getting
What-
the fever.
lot of bear missed. Your
Oh,
bear
yeah.
hunters, really?
Missed and wounded. Yeah, I could count on
More so than deer.
Oh yeah. Well, it used to be. It's kind of strange, but recently we seem to have more deer miss than I remember back in the past when I had the other place. It didn't seem, because I wouldn't have known, like the guys that just rented a cabin. I wouldn't have known about those stories. But like now we hear all the stories at the lodge. The guys come in at night, and I think this year, the first week of the season, I think there was 5 missed, wasn't there?
Sounds
I
right.
think there was 5
first week.
The first week, and they killed 3 and missed 5. The second week,
Son of a gun.
they killed 3 or 4, and they missed 4 more. And then we had the perfect week they ended up, the guy on Saturday ended up missing 1.
Yeah, it was 6 for
But they-
6,
my
I think, that
gosh.
third week.
Oh, they killed 9 the third week.
9.
They killed 9 the third week, and then they only missed 1.
Okay.
So it sounds like the third week was the best week, but we'd have probably had 9 every week if they'd have hit them all. But that's probably 10 deer missed in the season.
Wow.
Yeah, and I
Ben.
don't, some of them were running shots, obviously, or whatever it was. But yeah, there's
The
some
guy
missing.
that seems to have hard luck is Ben.
Ben, yeah.
Boy, he
Guy
gets...
Ben there. His clients, it's almost like he's cursed.
Oh, no way.
He's been, one of his clients, I remember a couple years ago, shot a buck, but he's had guys miss and wound more big bucks than you can even imagine. Like
Really?
He had
2
one
in a
week.
week and stuff
Well,
like
I
that.
thought-
Jeez.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I think a father and both sons, all 3 of them, I think, shot at bucks.
Yeah.
The same week and
Father,
didn't get
yeah.
one.
He's doing his job.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
getting deer in front of him.
But so they miss them, and I don't understand why, but they do. And wound them, like I said. But yeah, it's crazy.
don't shoot enough.
They get the fever or something, I guess.
I'm guilty of that. I don't shoot nearly as much as I should.
Shoot as much?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean practice?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they don't practice. A lot of guys, I remember the bear hunters, because I used to have them go check their guns on, because some of them flew and stuff. And the guys that would come back and they'd have to show me their target where they had, cutting holes in an inch
Off a
at
bench.
50 yards off the bench.
Yeah.
They'd be the ones to miss a bear.
Yeah.
It isn't about that. It's about how you practice. I tell people, don't even practice off a rest. Just put your gun up and shoot it. See what you're doing.
When Stephen was a kid, I remember I wanted him to have a 99 Savage, and he was so little that I wanted to get him an old one because the stocks were shorter. Plus, I wanted him to get a carbine because it would have been lighter and shorter. Well, almost all the early Savage 99 carbines, almost all of them are 303 Savage. which is a fine cartridge. It's basically the same thing as a 30-30, but the ammo is 4 times as much.
Yeah.
So I looked and looked and looked to find one in 30-30 because I wanted him to shoot all the time. Because back then, well, he's 35 now, so that would have been, 25 years ago. You could go to Walmart and buy a box of 30-30 shells for $9.99, right? So I finally found him down at Kittery Trading Post. I found a 99 carbine in 30-30 and had a little 2.5 power loophole scope on it. But I would let him go out behind the house and, like you said, not off a bench. Just, we'd walk around in the woods, and I own 35 acres down there. So I would have stumps or different things for him to shoot at, and we'd walk around, and I'd just have him shoot off his hind legs because
Nice. Yeah, that's
there aren't
perfect.
too many. Yeah, there aren't too many rests out in the woods, so you want to be able to shoot off their legs.
Yeah.
And
That's
again, the reason why I wanted him to, I'm a gun guy, so I got all these cartridges that are nice and I like them. But if a guy is going to shoot a lot and he's not a hand loader, he's going to be a one gun guy. A 308 or a 30-06 or a 30-30 is pretty nice because you can buy the ammo cheap and you can get it anywhere.
It's readily available.
Yeah.
For sure.
So let's talk about where you're from and your story here a little bit.
So yeah, I'm from Fort Fairfield, from Aroostook County. Started a YouTube channel like 3 years ago.
Yeah, right out of the blue.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. If someone who knows me, I'm not a big social media fan. And at that point in my life, I was like, I don't have any use for social media. I didn't have any accounts. And kind of the way the world was going, our traditions are being attacked, right? I like to hunt and fish. I want to preserve that. I want my kids to have these traditions available to them. So I was pondering one time. My dad was always recording stuff, and I like to play with cameras. And one day I showed up to deer camera, walked in the door, and kind of had a mic and stuff, kind of makeshift. My dad's like, what the heck are you doing? So we're going to start a YouTube channel. He's like, he was for it. He's like, sure. And so I just trying to find a way to do my part and kind of bring some positivity to the sport and try to help balance out all the negative that's out there. Because hunting and fishing has been a huge part of my life growing up, and it's very important for kids to be exposed to that. And it's something fewer and fewer kids are doing.
Right.
And if there's no kids being introduced to this stuff, eventually it's gonna be gone. So that was my goal with the YouTube channel. And the other big aspect of it is relationship with people. I think a lot of people right now just want to be heard. I think a lot of people struggle with stuff, and I wanted something that was quite intimate. And so I try to be very conscious about anyone who comments on my channel, emails me, try to show them some respect and show them that I hear what they're saying and try to give them a good, thoughtful response. And I think Hal's always been good at that. I don't know if you remember me emailing you. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I had a concern with a 7600. So I was shooting the 7600. I got it used, and I'd never shot one before, and they're a big fad. I'm like, I could see what this gun's all about. So I found one, and I was shooting it, kind of making a little video with it. And so I get back and I'm watching the footage, and I'm like, man, that bolt, the breech looks like it's opening on every shot, like prematurely. And then your wheels get turning, and I'm thinking, well, it must be normal. Like it would help cycle the next round. But I'm like, well, it's a used gun. Maybe something's not right with it. So I'm sitting there going, God, who can I get a hold of that would know for sure? It's like, well, wait, Hal Blood used to work for Remington. I'm like, I'll shoot him an email. And I'm like, I probably won't hear back, but he's busy. But I'll shoot him an email. It was a short little, like, hey, I'm noticing my breech opening when I fire the gun. And on video, it would just come back like an inch or so. And I think it was like 30 minutes later or something, I get a response back. Oh, totally normal. Just helps cycle the next round. I'm like,
I do remember that
Perfect.
now that you mention. I mean,
I was totally blown away. And that touches a person. You know, when someone
Acknowledges
officially gets back, you're like, wow, okay. He took a minute to. So, yeah, I've always kind of used, you know, that's part of what I've used to kind of address people that when they comment on my channel. I don't want anyone commenting, emailing, and I don't give them a response back.
yeah.
So that's pretty important.
I think it's important. People, you know, they're trying to learn. We're trying to teach people. They're trying to learn. So I get back to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was
If
amazed
I'm in the
how
woods,
quick,
it may
yeah.
not be that quick, and I try to do it. The reason I'm so timely with it, I don't want it to back up. Because once it goes down through my email
you'll lose
thing
it.
and you lose it,
You'll lose it.
you forget about it. So
Yeah.
as soon as they come in, if I can answer them right there and I might check, depends what I'm doing, you know, if I'm just this time of year, it's easier for me. I get up and I look in the morning and then
Wintertime,
I might
a little
check
more
it at
time.
noon and
Yeah.
check it in the evening. And some guys go back and forth, you know, some just have a question and whatever. And sometimes it turns into back and forth, but it's not only email, it's people that now they use the messenger there on
Yeah.
the Facebook Messenger. And so I go from all of them, you know, not very people have my text number unless I gave it to them, but the messenger and the emails, but I try to get right back to people and answer their questions. And
Yeah, so I was impressed with that. So that always stuck with me. And then the other thing is nature has a very huge therapeutic aspect. Like we were talking earlier, you're talking about how nature has a solution for everything or a treatment for anything that ails you can be found in nature. And just getting out in nature in itself just does something for the mind. It's always been kind of my therapy. So, we all have jobs, grind 9 to 5, and you kind of just do that every day. And you got to have something in your life that just kind of like yanks you back from it, kind of hits reset. So hunting, fishing, anything outdoors has always been my therapy. It's been my therapist. And so we're back to, again, there's less kids being introduced to that. And you see a lot of kids have issues with different things where there's diagnosis of certain conditions and maybe they don't actually have those conditions. They just need to get outside for a little bit and blow the stink off of them. So that was the whole reason for starting a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Wasn't really looking to, make it grow huge, just kind of let it organically become whatever it comes into. It's still manageable for me. So, I can answer everyone, have nice conversations with people, good email back and forth. And that's been really enjoyable. And the one thing that stuck out the most to me, and I never would have predicted it since starting a YouTube channel, was kind of the father-son relationship. Everyone, so I do a lot of hunting with my father. That's how I'd learned. And same thing with my son and my girls as well. But I get so many comments and so many emails, about, man, I wish I could have one more day with my dad, or I miss hunting with my dad. And that's been a common theme. So I've tried to kind of continue with that because obviously a lot of people feel the same way.
that's can be a niche,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people, they just one more day with their dad. And while we're here, sometimes we take that for granted. We go get caught in the grind.
Yeah.
And then-
well, I kind of did because my father went early, at 70, and he'd had a heart attack at 65.
Okay.
His own fault. He smoked his whole life, and then he quit smoking, come out of it, and everything was fine. And 5 years later, he ends up with pancreatic cancer. I think it was like 3 months from the time he got diagnosed until he was gone. So we didn't get to do. We did get him out hunting one time that fall. My brother brought him up, and before he got too sick to go, and then he passed away before Christmas, right up between hunting season and Christmas.
Yeah.
So we don't. I always took that for granted. You think about they'll be around forever, or whatever.
No, they won't be. So, and the other big thing, so back to kind of big woods bucks, just real quick. So growing up, I grew up hunting North Maine woods, and going to a deer camp at the age of 10. And I kind of always assumed then that that's how everyone hunted. And that's how everyone had a deer camp that they went to. And that was their, you're kind of, I guess, in your own little world as a 10 or 11-year-old. You don't really realize that there's another world out there. And there wasn't much out there that was relatable to someone who hunts that way. So whether it's deer tracking or still hunting in big woods, there's literally nothing. You had Larry Benoit's book way back in the day. Then the Benoits had some stuff. And then you started putting out books. And it was really only those things so I'd have those books beside my bed every fall. Like usually September, October, when you start getting the fever, you kind of have that itch that you need scratched, and just read through them. And it was the only relatable thing. Because I can remember 10 or 11 years old, I'd get books from professional hunters, and it was always talking about like hunting travel corridors or like bedding areas or watering holes or feeding areas. And I just remember they'd have these diagrams, and I'm like, it doesn't really make sense to me where we hunt. But I read them because it scratched an itch for me. But yeah, so Big Woods Box was one of the few relatable things then. Now it's becoming, there's a lot of hunting stuff on YouTube and deer tracking. Deer tracking's really become a thing.
Wonder why that is.
I couldn't imagine why.
Yeah. You know, the funny part about when I wrote that first book, when I actually always, in English, like in school, was like, that was like my worst subject.
Same with me.
Like a C. I'd get a C in English. But there was something, I remember from the time I was probably just got out of the Marine Corps or something, and I'm like, I ought to write a book. I didn't have a lot of, I shot a bunch of deer, but I didn't have a lot of experience, and I didn't really know why I wanted to write a book. I guess there wasn't really any real reason. Yeah. But I never did, I didn't really, so I never pursued that. And it was when I had my sporting camps there, and I started, guiding. I was guiding, and we had other hunters in camp, and then I just, at the dinner table, usually everybody's, you ask people what they saw today, and you start telling stories, and then they'd say, what'd you do today? How'd you do? Because my client would be there. I always had a client, and my client would start me telling them about where we went, and how far we went, and what we saw and all that. And they'd be like wide-eyed, listening and stuff. And then usually it was, we had a lot of repeat business, same guys in camp every year and stuff. And then all of a sudden it like worked into, you ought to write a book. You got all these stories, all this stuff, and you got to write a book. You really need to write and so there was people bugging me like them hunters for a couple of years. And I said, yeah, I guess I'll write a book,
I'll do it.
And I just decided just to write about what I knew about deer hunting, I had a lot of experience by then because I was in the woods every day, guiding hunters and doing it. And
then
then
I just didn't want to cut you off, but to show you how far back Hal and I go, had to be right around 2000, maybe a few years later. Hal had invited me to come up here because I hadn't been up and seen his place yet. And it was in the wintertime, just like this, and you were feeding deer here. And I brought my 4 kids up, remember?
Yeah.
We came up and had pizza with you and Deb down at the lodge. But my kids got the biggest kick out of it because you could drive right up the driveway there and
there's deer.
See them feeding the deer. Well, when we went back down to your place, your book hadn't come out yet. You had it like in manuscript form or whatever. And you said, yeah, I'm going to have a book published. And so I got to read some of your book before it wasn't.
No way.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
That's pretty cool.
It was down on your dining room table. You were working on it.
Yeah.
That first winter I came up, you were working on it. And I got to read some of it before you published it. And I remember how excited the kids were. That was the first time, too, I realized that deer like donuts.
Yeah.
Putting the donuts to them out there.
The leftover bear bait. They'd chow it down.
Deer like donuts?
Yeah,
Oh,
he'd
really?
mix it
They
in
eat
with the
anything.
grain.
They eat anything.
Mixed it in with the grain and they'd eat it.
Bread, any of that stuff, they'll eat it. It's good for them. But I met Lee what was this guy's name that wrote the article?
Tom
about
Hanrahan.
Tom Hanrahan. He used to write the Maine Sportsman.
Yeah, I remember that.
So he wrote this article about Lee Shands, and I read the article, and I go, that guy sounds pretty interesting. Seems kind of similar to me. I knew he was younger, and
Were you guiding then? Was that the...
I had just started my guide business. Yeah.
Okay.
But the guy, I'll let Hal finish afterwards.
Yeah.
But the reason why that Tom Hanrahan wrote the article was I used to go up and stay at a set of camps called Spencer Pond Camps.
Okay.
And there would be, I don't know, there was probably 8 camps there. And there'd be 25 guys in camp every year. And there'd be one buck hanging on the pole, and it would be mine every year.
Okay.
So-
so you're making a name for yourself.
So Tom ended up, writing this article. He had started writing. The first article he wrote was about me and my deer hunting, and the second one was about Paul Laney and his cat hunting. I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And so then that's how Hal knew about me.
yeah. And we just got together, got talking, and you was, I think, just starting your guide business.
Just
then.
started, yep.
I gave him a couple tips of what to do and not to do.
Most of you told me what not to do.
Yeah,
Saved me a lot of money.
I said, don't try this. You don't have to worry about trying
been
this.
there,
I've
done that.
Been there, yeah.
But I'll give you another. This is the type of person that Hal is, or almost anybody that's, a settled human being. I told the guy when he wrote the article, because I had killed, just before he wrote that, in 5 years, I'd killed 4 bucks that were between 233 and 245.
Jeez.
And then the other one was just under 200.
Yeah.
So, and he'd seen all of them. So when he published the article, it said, Lee Shands, is he Maine's best buck hunter with a question mark?
boys.
And I said, I don't want you putting that. I was only 34 years old at the
Okay.
time. I said, I don't want you to publish it like that, Tom. I said, there's going to be all kinds. I said, I know people that are better deer hunters than I am. And he said, oh, it'll be good for your business. He said, controversy is good. So,
Typical writer, right?
Yeah.
so
Stir
Hal
the
ends
pot a
up,
little bit.
he calls me up and said, boy, I read the article. He said, that was interesting. He said, I'm a big woods buck hunter too. He said, you ought to come up and visit me. So
Oh, boys.
even though Hal was 9 years older than me, 9 years more advanced, he didn't feel threatened or ticked off about it. He invited me, wanted to be my friend.
Come
I got
hunt with
some
me.
letters. I got some letters in the mail. This one guy wrote me a letter. You'd have thought that I had kicked his mother and spit on his dog. It was it was just hateful. And then he went on to, tell me what a wonderful deer hunter he was. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So that's how that stuff
There
turns
you
out.
are.
But I just think that it's funny that I tell people all the time, I don't know who the best deer hunter is. Hal would be my choice because we've been so close like brothers. But I've got all kinds of friends, close friends that are
Yeah.
crazy, crazy good deer hunters. So when people ask me, I said, well, it's probably not me, but it's one of my friends. I said, I'm pretty sure one of my friends is the best deer hunter.
We had talked about that one time, about just all the great deer hunters that you'll never hear about.
Yeah.
There's.
They got some right in town.
I'm
There's-
sure.
There's some kids my age, or I call them kids, a little younger. There's a bunch of guys here in Jackman that are 35 to 45 years old, and probably most people will never hear about them, and
And they're getting it done.
they're pretty good, ain't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So yeah, I mean so county boy, likes to hunt, started a YouTube channel. That was
yeah, that's it.
pretty
So
simple.
you have guests on, or you do it more? I know you do it with your dad.
We
a
do.
lot.
We come up. Usually, it's topics that are pressing in my life. So I try to keep stuff on the channel that's like it's authentic stuff I'm going through. Maybe I'm dealing with. Maybe someone else is dealing with the same thing. And usually, if you get a little bit of emotion into it, it comes off as authentic. You're not making. You're not trying to force some issue that, is maybe just popular at that given time. You just want to come across as real. So I try to incorporate that into it. So we talk about a lot of relevant topics to life. One is success. That's kind of a big theme with me. I'm very interested in what makes people successful. So I love people's stories because you can learn something from everybody. Everyone has their own journey that they've gone from, this point to that point. Just look at you, Hal. You were in the Marine Corps, lobster fisherman, start a guiding business. Someone can learn a lot from that, even if it's totally unrelated to what they do. Same thing with you.
But success principles are the same. Doesn't matter what. If it's deer hunting to
you're right,
making money to playing basketball, it's
100%.
They're all the same.
100%.
There's certain things you got to do to be successful, and if you do them, you probably will be.
Yeah.
Usually behind most of them, the biggest one is usually hard work.
Hard work.
Yeah.
Hard work.
Hard work and persistence. You got to stick with it.
Never give up.
Yeah. I read a quote in a book one time. I don't know who wrote the book, but the quote was, winners never quit and quitters never win.
That's
pretty simple. Pretty simple.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel like we are in a world right now where a lot of people, I think, struggle with that. Hard work. They want things, and they can be frustrated if things just aren't happening and form the way they think it should. Sometimes you make your own luck. Like you say, 2 points connecting.
Yeah.
You get out there long enough, you're going to have 2 points come together and it's going to work out.
We started our outfitting business, moved up. I made pretty good money lobstering, and Deb didn't have to work. And
that's
I only
a big
worked
risk.
like 4 months of the year, really 4 or 5 months. Come up here and for the first 10 years, I don't know, sometimes I didn't have enough money to buy gas to get out of town, You
figured it out though.
Yeah. Just kept at it. Didn't quit. Kept at it.
I think one of the funny things because he's 9 years older than me, and he did everything about 9 years before I did. But one of the funniest things
That's why Lee don't make any mistakes.
Yeah, he'll call you up first. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Okay, go ahead and do it.
So when he moved Deb up here, Hal and I, one thing that we really have in common is we don't see things for what they are. We see things for what we could make them.
Yeah.
So
we
have a
got
vision.
we got a vision.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget when you told me this, because Kelly was the same way when I moved her to Cornville. But Hal brought Deb up here, and he bought this piece of land just down below us, and it had big old rotten log piles and an old rotten pulp truck and stuff. And he thought, boy, this would be a good place to build a guide business. He said he brought Debbie up and she cried. Well, when I brought my wife over to Cornville, I bought this old farmhouse that needed a ton of work, but it was a beautiful piece of land. But my wife, same way. Our wives looked and thought, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah. I pulled up because I found this piece of land. We'd been looking for property. I told her I'm gonna have sporting camp someday, you know. And we were looking for land, and we actually looked different places in the state. But I'd already been hunting here and knew the area, but I always got drawn back here. And it was a 4-season area. We had the snowmobiling, you had fishing, hunting, had everything here. So I started focusing. I said, we're going to go to Jackman. We just got to find the right piece of land, And we'd looked at a couple places, and then I came up in May. I had my lab with me, and must have been during the week because she didn't come. A boy was in school, and I went fishing and camped out back in the woods and fished the ponds that we always had. And then it came in raining. I got up in the morning, it was pouring rain. I go, I ain't going fishing today. I might as well just get out of here. So I packed everything up. And I wasn't in a hurry to get back.
Yeah.
And when I got back to town, there was this road, the Addian Road goes down to the lake. And I said, I've never been down that road. I didn't know where it went really. I said, I'm going to drive down there. It's was like preordained, I drove down the road and there's a for sale sign on the land. And I go, this is pretty handy because it's a gravel road but it's close to town, and I wanted the place with power, and you know.
Yeah.
So I turned around, I looked at it, you know, and I go, yeah, this looks pretty cool place right here. And I drove all the way down to the lake and back. And I said, well, I'm going to go down and see the realtor. He's right in town here. And it had just gone on the market. And
No kidding.
It originally was a 50-acre piece. And the guy that bought it got bought from the bank, this guy from Massachusetts. And he had it surveyed in half. And either half was for sale. He was going to keep half.
Okay.
So I wanted the half closer down to the road there and stuff. So I said to the guy, I said, do you think it was 25 acres each lot, and he wanted $29,000. Well, back then that was pretty high priced land for up here, you know.
It's a lot of money.
And I said, geez, you think he's going to take, what do you think he'll take for it? And he goes, I don't know. It just came on the market. And I'm like, you know what? It's just where I wanted it and just what I wanted. And it's wasn't outrageous money, but I said, all right. I said, tell him I want the piece by the road, closer to the road. I don't want to run power in a driveway too far.
So you hadn't talked to your wife? Yeah.
No.
Oh God.
So I had an extra $100 in my pocket, and I gave him $100 to put down. I said, I'm going to bring my wife up next weekend, and we'll be up next week, and we'll buy it. Well, you know, tell the guy we'll take it or whatever. So I told her, first thing she said when I said, I found our piece of land. I'm all excited. I get home and I said, I found our piece of land. She goes, you did? I said, yeah, I put money down on it. And she goes, wait a minute. You put money on it and I haven't even seen it yet? And I said, it might be gone by the next weekend when you can come up. So anyways, I said, we'll go up next weekend. You'll see it. And I'm happy as a lark. I mean, I'm looking at this place.
You got a vision.
I actually walked it because when I went to the realtor, I said, he showed me how the layout was, and it had been surveyed. So it was all blazed and painted.
Yeah.
So I walked the perimeter, beautiful up there, you know, and I said, wow, this is really nice, you know. So we would come up that weekend. We loaded up son Gary and the dog, and we come up, and I'm all excited. I'm driving up the road, and I stop right at, it wasn't even really it was a little pull-out kind of driveway that wasn't even really a driveway. Row of rotten pulp logs, and growing up with it was like a wood yard, you know, in a white panel truck junked out there in a pulp truck. And she started crying, like Lee said. She's like, I can't believe
your bubble.
I can't look at this place, you know. That's all she could see. I go, we'll get that cleaned up, you know. And that was it.
It can be tough when you get a vision and you tell someone, and
Yeah.
they may not see it the same way.
Yeah. It's funny.
But you made it. You made it something.
Yeah. Had good times there,
And she's probably like, hey man, looking back, yeah.
He didn't really want to come up. She told her story on the podcast. It was kind of funny, though. She was kind of kicking and, well, she had it pretty well made down there. And her family, I get it all. Her family was
close
all
by
there and stuff, you know. But I had kind of warned her. I told her when I started Lobster, and I said, I'm going to do this for 10 years, and we're headed north.
Did you go 10 years?
I only made it 9. I only made it 9. But that's all right. In retrospect, I wish I'd have gone 10 or 11 and made a little more money, because it might have made the struggle a little easier. But
well, the one good thing you had going for you was you sold your lobster boat to the guy, and that kind of kept you going for a few
little
years,
bit.
right?
Yeah. I financed a young fellow that was down there for my lobstering business and stuff, but that still didn't go very far.
Yeah, that's
We
tough.
were trying to build everything and get clients, and it was hard. So anyway, that's it.
That'd be tough.
Huh?
So that'd be tough.
Yeah.
It'd be tough to do.
I think it's it's really similar. It takes somebody with a lot of drive like us, because guiding is kind of like farming. If you didn't grow up in it and you didn't have the camps or a location or something, it's a hard business to break into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see where that.
Yeah.
Because once you're established, probably a lot of if you're good at it, a lot of repeat clients. You get a good customer base there at some point. But getting that established,
slow. It was slow, because the beginning's the hard part to, to get established.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. So,
Well, you told me when you came up, you did all kinds of different stuff though, like you would help guys build on camp. So whatever you had for free time,
when
you
I
were
had
doing
free
something.
time, I was finding something to do to make some extra money. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Well, this has been a good conversation, I guess. So, Maine Outdoor Enthusiast.
Maine Outdoor Enthusiast.
Go to Paul's podcast and take a listen, subscribe, and all that. See some interesting things. So you've been at it 3 years. So
3 years.
You put one out every week or so?
Try to do one every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got plenty to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
I've had a good time.
Glad to have you
on here.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up. I heard we got some lasagna for supper. My honey's making.
My wife made a chocolate cream pie for dessert.
Oh, my word.
All right.
We'll be styling.
My oldest daughter made some cookies.
All right. We're going to eat good. You got to eat right to hunt right. So anyways, we'll check out, sign off. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Hit the notification bell there and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and all that stuff. And support our sponsors. That's what keeps us going. And until next time, good luck on the trail.